Welcome to the first of the Cybersecurity Agony Uncles podcasts. I'm Stephen Ridgway, and I'm here with Rich Benfield.
Hi, good afternoon, listeners.
Interesting question that came through. I'll read it out, and then we can just discuss what our thoughts were on that. Actually, let me just find the whole pitch. Where's it gone? Where's the question? So, question was, I'm working on a company that has just been bought by a larger company. I'm staying on and I'm part of the technical M&A project, which is fine, but the buying company is insanely disorganized. So basically, what suggestions have we got that will help us to address these problems? Interesting. I mean, I've been through M&A type things before. So this person says that they're whilst previously a senior role, is now the lead engineer. So it's got less authority than they used to have over what's going on. The company that's bought out his company looks like they've been through things in the past and have had a terrible time of it, from technical integration. So, what are the sort of common sense things then that we can think of that would help under those sorts of circumstances? I don't know, Rich, have you been through that sort of M&A stuff in the past?
Not specifically M&A, but I've been through enough difficult technical projects involving teams of internal and external people. But I think the tricky thing with this is that somebody's got a loss of seniority to a certain degree, and that can obviously breed bad blood. But also, they're still going to be working there after this project's been completed. So they've got a balance between working in their new role, the less senior role, and yet not allowing the whole thing to get derailed to the point where it makes them look like a bad employee after the event.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things I've seen in the occasions where I've been through this myself, and actually consulted in helping on some occasions as well. One of the areas that almost always gets pushed to the back is the security side of things. So it's normally technically so complicated to merge organizations that when you start to then build in thoughts around security on top of that, that can be really hard to do. But I think that's one of the that is a really important piece not to forget about, which unsurprisingly, seeing as we work for a cybersecurity business, that would be where some of the focus I think ought to be. But it is really difficult from the point of view of the company that's purchased. They'll only have a fairly scant idea about how secure their new acquisition actually is, because you just never get close enough during the due diligence phase. Obviously these things focus on the finances, don't they? And they focus enough on the tech to know that it's not going to be a multi-million-pound project trying to join it all together. But then how do you ensure that you're merging the tech properly, so that you can continue to do business, but you don't introduce a whole load of somebody else's cyber risk into your new organization?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, you've got your risk analysis, your risk register, and really you'd hope everything's encapsulated in that. But with any M&A project, you're just going to be missing loads of stuff. As much of a nightmare as he says it is, it's one of those things, and I think that this particular person feels as though they're fumbling around in the dark somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't got a good team of people on both sides, this is going to be just truly painful. Um,
Yeah,
there's go on.
and not to mention strong project management. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's where the buck ultimately should stop. But my concern for this person is that because um, they were the head of in the old world and are now becoming a lead engineer, they might have people on their side expecting them to pull off a miracle, and on the other side, who knows what's going on. But as long as they've got a strong project manager, they might well fumble their way through it. But
Yeah.
can't see it being an enjoyable process.
No, I know. I mean, these things, we at a tech level and a cyber level, they never are. They never are nice pieces of work to go through. At least none of the ones I've been through have been. I think the questions is kind of like, how do you get the business processes aligned properly so that you can merge the tech? Because you've undoubtedly got at least two finance systems, at least two HR systems. You'll have different approaches to how your tech is being delivered in general. It can be an absolutely huge thing to do. And yeah, without decent project management, without time to do it properly as well, it can be really hard.
Yeah, and the thing that really sort of flags up in this question to me is where they say, should I leave any common sense musts for a technical integration project? The first
Mm.
part of their question, which, when they say the word must, that really sort of pulls front and center a Musco style document.
Mm.
Have they gathered all the requirements? Because it doesn't sound like the leading team actually have pulled together these requirements properly. Clearly, the person who's asking the question here thinks that there's stuff missing,
Yeah.
and and they're wondering, should they go ahead and bring those up?
I think they should. I think definitely that sort of stuff needs to get captured on as you say, it needs to get captured on the risk register. But I think it goes beyond the sort of project risk register, just on the technical side of joining them together. It really needs to be, front and center of the new combined company risk register. Because if this stuff has a tendency to absorb time and money and resources in ways that you can't imagine unless you've actually been in one that's gone badly.
Yeah, exactly. And I think obviously this person's had their issues in terms of losing some seniority throughout this process, but I still think that they should go ahead and raise everything that needs to be raised, and
Yeah.
and there are some times when you have to sort of suck it up to a certain degree and
I agree with that. Yeah.
and just do your best work. And if that means having a few awkward meetings and a few awkward conversations in order to make sure that everything's covered, then so be it.
No,
Because,
absolutely.
well, you, as with any project of any kind, you don't want to be the reason that it fails.
No. No, absolutely, and if you see things that are not going to work, I don't know. I mean, I've made a career out of telling people above me that what they're about to do is completely daft. Um, it at least hand on heart, then you know that you've done the best you can. So I suppose there's that point at which you've planned it all out, but then you've actually got to start joining things together. And I think that's the point where you've got to have a really good grip on security there. So, just back down to your basic hygiene stuff. Who's got access to what? How are you managing your RBACs, your role-based access stuff? So, how do you make sure that the right people from both organizations are going to have access to the stuff that they need to keep the business running? Are you literally merging company A into company B's systems, or if company B, and I've been through a sort of reverse merger as I've consulted in and helped somebody, helps an organization with that, where the company that bought them was cash rich, but technologically and from a cyber perspective, much less mature than the organization that they bought. Um, and so instead of saying, well, okay, we'll take all of one or all of the other, they said, well, let's take the opportunity to transform whilst we do the merger, and it was absolutely excruciatingly painful trying to work those things out. So I don't know, the way, perhaps if it was me planning these things out, I'd have a serious think about whether you want to basically migrate people and processes over from one company into the other company and just keep all the tech the same, or whether you need to build out something that's completely separate and then merge both, migrate rather both companies into that. Although I don't ever recall anybody realizing that that was what they'd end up having to do, so that never gets factored into the due diligence and the costs associated with this stuff. Have you ever come across one, or even heard of one, where they've managed to come in on budget for this sort of thing?
No, never.
No, me neither. Me
It's
neither.
that of
Yeah,
speed, cost, and and
yeah,
performance in pick
yeah,
two.
exactly. Yeah, yes, absolutely, yeah, yeah. And normally speed is determined by some or other legal document. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah. Working at the speed of law,
yeah,
which can be
it,
excruciating.
it
But
can be, but I mean, it gets to that point where yeah, we've got 12 months to do this, so we'll spend 9 months faffing about, and then we'll hoof it all in on the fly in the last 3 months. Dear.
yeah, and it's always a way. With anything like this, you've got your people, your process, and your technology.
Yeah, yeah.
And what happens is senior management want to change all three at once, but you know that you can only change one at a time to stand any chance of real success.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, it's and yeah, that takes some thought. It takes specialists. I think it takes some specialist teams of people that have been through this, and then managing to do this without inadvertently putting your company databases on the internet or whatever, the usual sorts of things that companies get caught out with, because it's difficult enough when you understand your own threat landscape. It's difficult enough to manage that, let alone when you're taking on something which potentially got all sorts of other some vulnerabilities, or a completely different landscape. Getting the new vision is quite hard. I think security visibility is something that is worth bringing to the forefront during these sorts of things. There is a point, isn't there, where you generally have to join the two technical infrastructures together so that you get migration piece, get the data over or get the user accounts moved from one place to another. And how do you ensure that bit is okay? Once you've finished, you've got a load of stuff that you can just shut down, switch off, get rid of. But there's a time when you're running this weird hybrid, which can be really difficult. That can be really difficult to keep on top of. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really critical time in terms of security, because you're opening up extra ports, you're joining systems together, and all sorts of risks can come into it then from a security standpoint.
Oh, there's an interesting comment that's just popped up. How do you measure when these integrations are complete or successful? And I think that is a really good point. If you don't have a really good definition of what the end point is, what exactly is it going to look like, and how do you measure that you've success? What does good look like when you've done it? Then yeah, you can end up going off in all sorts of directions or just drifting on forever. So yeah, I mean, Ross's comment there that in his experience the discovery phase is never given enough time and resources, I would absolutely agree with. I think every time I've been involved in any kind of M&A, that piece has just not been, it's just not been given the attention that it should have been, because during these things the people making the decisions are generally not technical people, and they're generally not cyber people. They're doing the M&A because they're doing this merger because they've got some synergies. They've got the two businesses. The two businesses are going to be more profitable once they are in place. So the focus is all around the money, and it's not about the how so much as the what in that case.
Yeah, exactly. And with a short discovery phase, and I've seen it happen so many times. You don't capture everything, and you find yourself working on the fly and wondering why things got missed
Yeah.
or didn't work properly. But the problem is, if you turn around quite often to a senior manager and say, "Oh, we're at the discovery phase, and it'll be like this for 3 or 4 more weeks," they say, "Well, that's not pushing things forward."
Yeah. Yeah.
But as Ross says, it's absolutely
Yeah.
critical.
No, I completely agree.
So many places want to gloss over it, get straight to doing
Mm.
stuff.
Yeah.
I've noticed that infrastructure engineers, the hands-on techies tend to very often want to get straight down to it.
Yep, absolutely. There is a tendency, isn't there, in the technical world, just to get stuck in because you've got a good idea about how things might work. So once you get started, of course, it's all on a roll, but then you can very easily, go down dead ends doing that sort of stuff. And especially if you're doing a transformation at the same time as a migration, that can just be excruciatingly painful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the plus side, in recent years, with a lot of SaaS platforms and whatnot, there's a lot of interoperability that 10, 15 years ago we wouldn't have even come across. Obviously things like federated sign-on
Yeah,
and things like that. That tends to be a lot quicker now and a lot less painful than it was. So, there's elements of that are good for onboarding identity services and whatnot.
yeah. No, I agree with that. But I think there are some hazards there. Solutionizing again. One of the comments, solutionizing too early is often something that trips up um, organizations. So getting too too deep into the what's the tech going to look like before you've really had a chance to think through what's the tech going to do in its new state. I think that making sure that you've got that vision right properly and that you've been through and actually talking to other subject matter experts within both organizations to properly understand how these things are at the moment before you start thinking about how you're going to convert one into the other. Um, it's, yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And quite often from the top of the organization, you might get handed a new organizational hierarchy chart, and from the bottom, you've got a list of systems, people, and processes, and you've got to get that whole lot magically arranged somewhere in
yeah,
the middle to make it work. And yeah, it is all about discovery, but it's also about people keeping a cool head under pressure and yeah, as I mentioned earlier, having a super strong project manager is going to be key to all of this, or a team of project managers, depending on the scale of it.
yeah, I agree with that. And making sure that you've got senior buy-in at that level as well, and that there's some kind of understanding at that level that some of this stuff is going to be difficult, and that the need to be there are decisions that are going to have to be made, which are potentially business impacting, and shouldn't really be left to the technical team just to make this stuff up themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And there might be elements of compliance to throw into the mix, and obviously a large input from HR with any M&A process, and getting all of those teams aligned and on board from an early stage is really key to
Yeah,
success, I
I
think.
agree with that. One thing that people don't tend to do, but has always struck me as being something quite sensible, is at that point where you are joining the two technical infrastructures together in order to enact the migration, you could quite easily put in place sort of temporary security visibility there. There will be points at which the networks touch, so you should be able to look at the traffic that's flowing from one to the other. You might want to roll out kind of DFIR type agents onto both sides of the organization during that phase so that you can actually see what's really what's going on, and make sure that if you've done all this stuff and you've done the design, you've got the architecture sorted, you've got your migration strategies and plans in place, actually make sure it's working.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I had a simple example of that several years ago with an older via telephone
Mm.
system. We had to hook it up to a client system directly via an MPLS link. Sorry for the non-techies who are listening. That's my fault. But essentially, we couldn't understand why we couldn't successfully transfer one call from our Avaya phone system to their Avaya phone system. The link was up, the routing was in place, everything looked promising. Had we had proper network capture at that point, it would have taken 5 minutes to realize that a firewall was interfering when it said it wasn't. It would have trivialized what took nearly a week to
Yeah,
resolve.
exactly. And so the temptation is, you just say, well, we've got a time, we're time pressured on this stuff. There's, so much money involved in this. Let's just open it all up so that it all works.
Yeah, we all know the risks that can come with opening up stuff.
Absolutely, because of course, and that brings into play the whole question of disgruntled employees. People who've been senior in one organization and appear to have had a demotion as part of the process may not be the most motivated people for making this stuff go well. Of course, everybody is has a great deal of integrity throughout these processes, don't they, or not?
Absolutely, right up to the point where their services are no longer
Yep,
required.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and I don't envy the position of the person that asked this particular
No, I
question.
don't.
But really, you've got to trust in the process. You've got to trust in the people you're working with, and it's all, as with any project, it's all about
Yeah,
communication.
definitely. Yeah.
Upwards, downwards, sideways, to vendors, the whole piece. Just get everybody involved who needs to be
Yeah.
involved, and make sure they're all aware of what's going on.
Yeah. So I think that the advice that I would give this particular person is all those things that you're worried about, everything you can see that's a risk or just an unknown or whatever it might be, just get it all captured somewhere. Get the project manager to run a good project raid log for this. But make sure that anything that could be business impacting actually has got visibility of somebody senior enough in the new organization to make decisions about what to do with it. But there's not much more you can do other than that, really.
No, exactly. And don't suffer in silence. If you need support, ask.
Absolutely, yeah, completely. And don't be afraid of saying we don't know how to do this. We need to go and build out some you know um, proof of concept stuff. We need to do the stage this all properly. Yeah.
Not.
Good. I think I've just seen the comment come through. As boring as they are, registers and catalogs are such an important place to start. Completely agree with that. Yeah, do the boring stuff. Do the boring stuff. Get the risks captured, and don't forget to have at least good, if not superb, security visibility whilst you're going through this phase. And yeah, I wish this particular person a great deal of luck with it. Hopefully, they'll avoid some of the pitfalls. And don't worry, you can't make friends in these processes, but you can influence people.
Exactly.
Great.
Great. And that's a wrap. Thank you
No,
very
that's
much.
really good. So, if anybody listening has any kind of questions that you think Rich or I may be able to opine on, do send them in. Do post them, and we will speak again at the next one. And that's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.